So one of the issues that I want to bring up here in this question of innovation, and I think one of the themes that's coming up is also community. Communities are not simple, they're very complex. We know that from social issues, scientific issues, economic issues, etc. So complexity is actually a prize, and it's something we really need to be working with more, I think, than simplicity. So I mean, I'm sure there's a role for simplicity too. The question I want to bring up as you're looking at these slides is the question that I'm always asking, which is what if, and imagine, and question. So what if, here's a 25-year-old artist selected as one of 10 in the country to show their work at the Guggenheim. That's a career made at that point of my life. And I say, what if? What if that's not really what I believe the role of an artist is in this culture? Is the role of an artist to communicate a particular language between a group of people that understand that language? I began to ask what is the role of the artist? And I began to think that, you know, artists really could be researchers. Artists are researchers. We're people that ask questions through our own work. So this led me out to say, what if I do work where no one can see it? And in the very early 70s, this began the whole idea of site-specific projects that artists have now picked up on. My own work went to very specific natural environments, this is the Everglades, and began to question the idea of what's a human role in a natural environment? What if? What if I make something that can tell me about the role of light, the role of being in a place, the role of just being present with something? What's a corporate headquarters? What's the role of an object within a corporate headquarters? This is Becton Dickinson Corporation, where the purpose of the work is not to be an object within that area, okay? Not to be an object within that area, but to actually be a stimulant for the people around it. This project creates a sense of mystery and question because it goes down below the ground. No one ever sees it completely. What's an airport? What is public art? This is the Denver airport. It's taking an acre of an interior space and turning it into something that we begin to question as why is an airport so antiseptic? Here a project that was built in Vermont, packed with manure from my studio, brought to Denver, put up, irrigated, it's wet, it's moist, there are birds flying around, there's McDonald's, kids drop their French fries in, creates great wildlife opportunities, etc. And then what I really want to focus on, because I just want to push this notion, I am an artist, I still work in my own personal work in my studio, but I've had a great opportunity to come out and be in the culture in a very special way. And I guess my joke today is what if I could take a walk with the CEO of Nestle's and walk take a hike. I understand he's Swiss and loves to hike. I'd love to spend that afternoon with him. I think that's a good joke to start with. So what if garbage facilities, this is a garbage facility, this is what most communities have. This is your typical out of sight, out of mind. What if a public works official has an extraordinary vision and says, I need the people to understand what places like this are in our community? So basically he hires an engineering firm that builds these all over the world, and there's the box and there's the plan, and the little steeple is saying that's where people will go. And the plan itself is saying this is a place of 25 acres of pavement with a box in it. And what if we are brought in as a creative person to think about this from another point of view? Because the public works official realizes that this isn't really going to bring the people there. And what if becomes, imagine a building that actually stands as a beacon in Phoenix for understanding the issues of waste. And what if this building is actually about bringing the community in and has an opportunity for public rooms and a place where environmental organizations can have space at a very low cost, and a community meeting room and a library. and a place for artists to work, et cetera, et cetera. And suddenly a waste facility becomes something very different. And the place that public works people work, why are they in trailers? Why are they in the basement of buildings with no windows? How do you let these people work in a facility and become a part of it? How do you let the public come into this facility and understand what's possible in it? How do you invite thousands of school kids to come every year and understand how what they do in their lives, and then they go home and tell their parents, is essential to the issues that are bigger than just throwing away some trash? And how do you make a facility that gets people excited about that? And we built it. And the New York Times called it one of the most 8 important buildings of its year at that particular time, which was extraordinary considering it's built by an artist and it's a dump. I mean, not built by, designed by. So the city gets very interested and says, well, what are you artists? And there's another artist involved here, Lene Glott. What if you artists start thinking of this mile around this facility, which is basically an area of the city which we have trashed, and what could it be? So we start to look at this place and we realize that the recycling center, which is at the corner here, is next to a landfill. And what if we start thinking about the materials that are left from that recycling center becoming part of an eco-industrial park, where one industry is taking the resources of another or the waste of another, where the landfill is actually generating electricity to run it on its methane. And this is now a plan for the city. And what if we imagine a facility that's similar to the recycling center that we built? What would be the ideal facility? And then what happens when Environmental Defense Fund finds something like this and says, can we bring infrastructure and communities together? Can we think of infrastructure as, can we live with what sustains us? So why should this be in anybody's backyard? Look at environmental justice issues. Look at any of the issues of why you don't want this here. Can we create infrastructure for communities? And using the Phoenix Project as a stepping off point, we did a white paper for them that is going to be distributed around the country and that will go to community activist groups, government officials, policy people, and it will say what you can ask for. It's maybe not going to look like Phoenix, but certainly there are concepts and principles there that will relate to any community. So what if this is a marine transfer facility and environmental defense realizes that garbage trucks are creating 6 million miles of emissions a year of their garbage trucks in the city? If we can put these facilities on the coast, on the waterways, then we have an opportunity to cut that. But who's going to accept it? How are we going to convince a community that their health and the health of everyone is more important than what they assume is going to be built there? So the challenge was, how do you take a facility like that and turn it into a positive? And we look at the resources of this facility. So we start, if I got to talk to Mr. Nestle, I would say, let's look at all the roofs that you have. Let's look at all the walls that you have. Let's look at all the waste that comes out of a place like this. And we look at a facility that suddenly takes in its garbage trucks, turns off the motor. This is basically taking them around a ramp and allowing us to create what's called the Guggenheim of garbage now. And it also helped the city people, the city council, the mayor, Mayor Bloomberg, to convince the political structure that if we can think of our infrastructure in a very different way, then we can reinstitute marine transfer. In the years since this was worked on, they have now passed this as part of marine transfer will now be a part of the city garbage system. If you're going to have a power plant, what if a company comes to us and says, we need to place a power plant in a community in New York City. How are we ever going to be able to do this and build, even though what's inside the box is state of the art? How is this going to relate to outside and the people in the community? And actually what they thought, the CEO in my meeting with him in New York and our team, and that is a galaxy, is basically we're the lunch entertainment, because the artist is going to come in and we'll fairy dust around it and hopefully transform this. Well, actually what our fairy dust did and in the lunch hour turned into an all-day meeting, is we showed the CEO and his board that what they were building had for $3 billion had an opportunity to go way beyond and actually save the company money, which related to all the lawsuits they would have, all the PR they'd have to do, if they just used the community and worked with them to understand the resources of the facility. And what we were able to see here was that the walls, again, the roofs, all of this became community agriculture. And it was community agriculture for nonprofits who needed to plant in native species in the area. And instead of going upstate New York to nurseries where they would grow slowly, we could actually use the waste heat from this power plant and generate that heat and collect water off the roofs of it, enough water to irrigate this for a year, because there's 41 inches of water in New York, and this is 8 acres of impervious pavement, roof surfaces. We were able to transform this into a facility that grows the plants, that allows the CEO to take a deduction for the company because he's now giving his walls and roof systems to nonprofits. It's an interesting story. What happens when a corporation like Whole Foods, who is being brought to and wanting to be an anchor for almost all of these shopping centers, this is America, and they come and say to us, you question assumptions, we want you to question the assumption of what is a shopping center. We know what happens inside the box of our store, but now we want to relate to the community as a whole. We want to understand how our store can change places like this. And basically, the first thing I said was, tell me, I didn't know anything about this, by the way, and they said, that's fine. We don't want you to know about it. We don't want to give you constraints. We don't want to tell you what doesn't work. We want you to imagine and help us see what might be possible, and without the restriction of knowing what's feasible. And because in any corporate situation, you're going to hear all the reasons why you can't do something. They didn't want to tell us that. They wanted to see what we'd come up with. So they gave us a shopping center in Orlando. Here's your usual thing. The big box is right at the center, parking, tons of pavement. How could we transform this? What would we think of it as being? So one of the first things we did, which was definitely breaking the rules, was we tilted the box so it wasn't parallel to the road. Well, there are just rules about that. And we were able to show all the advantages of just tilting that box. Another thing, of course, was the opportunity to collect water on the site, to actually create a green space and use the shopping center and its area as a community gathering space for community gardens and other kinds of opportunities without giving anything up to the developer. Lots of issues, lots of opportunities that we noted in a study called Outside the Box, which I just showed, which basically explores all kinds of opportunities for these stores to interact socially, environmentally, and economically with the community. So then they said, well, it's wonderful on this shopping center, let's get that out to the developers, and basically our guidelines have now become what Whole Foods sends to developers. So if you want them, you're going to be following those things that we discovered in Outside the Box. There were a few things that were just not going to be acceptable. And here's one that's an interesting one, because they said, well, imagine the store. So you imagine the store, and suddenly, we're having a lot of fun thinking of the walls of this building collecting all its water, growing plant material, the building and light cutting through it, solar generation, et cetera, et cetera. We go to town on it, and the developer sees this and just about faints, and then comes back and says, well, let's start negotiating. And the negotiation for the store in Orlando, which is now under construction, is bringing it to a place that these kinds of places never been. The landscape is naturalized. We're collecting the water. We're developing solar collection, et cetera, et cetera. So we've managed to get something to happen. We're now designing 7 stores for Whole Foods in Florida. We've written a green mission for the company nationally. I just want to finish up on what's a building and what's a place that we inhabit in our environment. This is a project for the European community. It's a research center for environment. It was built, the architect is Danish and partner. The young architects who actually won the competition and invited me in on that project were working for Banish, former MIT students of mine, in fact. And this stands as actually a state-of-the-art today. It's finished in '99. It still stands out as the state-of-the-art. And when you think of complexity, this is where complexity, not simplicity, works. And the complexity here is that we're taking the water, the air, and we're cleaning it through the building. The building is merely an apparatus for all the systems around it. And it also wants to generate health going out from it. So the first thing on this, this flat piece of derelict land, we built a water source. And that water source is taking the water from the building, and then we're using technology that's off the shelf. This is not an expensive building, greenhouse technology, and creating interior atrium spaces. And these interior atrium spaces are basically filled with plants because they're also transpiration. They're cooling the building, air is being put through them, they're filtering that air. The water feature becomes sculptural. It's cleaning the water. That water comes in from the exterior pond. There's a library. All the offices are built around this. The interconnection of these spaces, which can be built on, also becomes the traffic and social intercourse between people. What's an office space? Every office becomes open to the garden on the interior, open to the garden on the exterior. And finally, it ends up, this water, in a second atrium where it's over a flat pool. The plant material is all part of a scientific study that they're doing, so it's watercress, low-growing plants. That's cleaning, polishing the water. That water then flows over, creates sound, a sense of place, and is also then pumped up through the systems to back into the toilets and also to irrigate the building. So what if and imagine are really what I'd like to, certainly push into innovation and leave you with that message. Thanks.